Good morning everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm just going to do a little video on why I think the Bt50 and the Ranger make an awesome touring vehicle. So this might help someone that's looking to buy a new car or buy a second-hand car, possibly change up from an old four-wheel drive to a new one. Personally, I've had a lot of patrols in the past and I love patrols. I think they're one of the best off-road vehicles available. But if you're talking an all-round tourer, that obviously means a lot of miles on the road as well, then I think the Bt50 takes the cake. Or Ranger, basically the same car. So the Bt50 and the Ranger are basically the exact same car, other than the front end and the tailgate on the tub is a little bit different with the tail lights and stuff. So same chassis, same GVM, same motor. I believe obviously 2020 is when, or 2021 is when they switched to Isuzu, and they've changed a bit up there, but up from 2011 till then, Ford and Mazda kind of combined their forces there. So let's get straight into it. First up, I'm going to talk about a few things that this car has factory, which a few other models don't, and I think they're very important things to have on a full drive. So first up is factory rear diff lock. These have a electric rear locker. So factory rear diff lock, button right there, easy as that. No installation, no nothing like that. I mean, you'll be paying like $2,000 plus to fit a rear locker to a car, like a new D-Max or something like that. So it's just an awesome thing to have from factory, and it can get you out of some sticky situations. Another thing that I've kind of only recently discovered, I suppose, was before my trip, I went to do diff breathers on this car, because if you're doing any real serious full driving, you definitely want to throw diff breathers on your car. So basically a diff breather just allows your diff to breathe when submerged in water. So the Bt50 and the Ranger come with factory front diff breathers and gearbox and transfer. So if you can see those little hoses there, little 90s that are coming up there. That's basically your front diff, your gearbox and your transfer all ran up to that little spot there in the engine bay, which is just super practical. You've also got a rear one as well that runs up next to your fuel filler. So obviously I've got a tray on now, so if you had a tub from factory and hadn't touched anything, your rear diff breather will run up to about here. So I've just cable tied mine up in between here with some of the cabling I've got running up there. So both of them are nice and high and out of the way. If you don't have diff breathers, I suggest you chuck them on your car. A friend of mine who's coming on my trip has a D-Max and unfortunately doesn't have diff breathers, so it's pretty easy. It's just getting some small hose and running it up to a high point and putting a little breather on the end so nothing can get inside and contaminate your diff. So the next thing I'll talk about with the Bt50 is the GVM. So I believe these are one of the highest GVM rated vehicles on the market besides the dual cab cruiser. Again, you're paying for fuel, and I mean, what are you paying? 100 plus for a cruiser at the moment. This car was $25,000 a year ago. So put that in perspective, you can buy 4 of these for the price of 1 cruiser. I know which one I'd pick. So it just means you can basically put more on the car without worrying about GVM upgrades or something like bending the chassis, Navara owners maybe. So just as a preventative, I've gone ahead and put a rear fish plate on the chassis of mine. As you can see there, it's like a 4mm plate that's been laser cut and welded in. This is just a bit of peace of mind because I'm sitting basically on 3.2 tonne, and I didn't want to do a GVM upgrade because it's basically a bit of paper with some upgraded suspension. I've already got upgraded suspension, so by putting that in, it's just a little bit peace of mind, and I think it'll cover me for my trip around Australia. So the Ford Ranger actually overtook the Toyota Hilux as Australia's best-selling four-wheel drive dual cab. So that says a lot. I believe it's because Toyota kind of relied too much on their reputation, that they just kind of didn't change too much, whereas the Ranger kind of went a bit newer and added all these features that the Hilux didn't have. The Hilux and the Cruisers are a little bit agricultural for me. I'm not a huge fan of them. I believe they're reliable. I love Toyota reliability, don't get me wrong there, but they just feel very outdated inside and to drive. So the Ford Ranger and the Bt50 also being the same car means a lot of parts are interchangeable. I believe it's a lot cheaper to go to Ford for parts for these. Obviously not things like headlights and bumpers and stuff that are unique to Mazda, but any engine parts and stuff like that, Ford will generally be like 40% cheaper. So if you own a Mazda, make sure you're calling up Ford for your spare parts before you go to Mazda. So little hot tip there. But that also means, being Australia's best-selling car, that there'll be more at wreckers, there'll be more parts available on the road, and just things are more likely to fit when you're off camping and doing that kind of stuff. So I think that's a big thing with touring. If you need parts in a remote place, you've just got a better chance of getting them, or they might be a little bit cheaper compared to something like an Amarok that's a bit harder to find. So lastly, the thing I'll talk about with this is the cost of fuel. So fuel at the moment has gone through the roof. When I bought this car, it cost me about $110 to fill a tank, 75 litre tank. Nowadays, I filled up the other day, it was $160, and that wasn't even like right to the brim. So I'd probably say 170 would fill this thing up. Now this is a massive factor for someone like me that's about to travel Australia, because I mean, that's just gonna add thousands of dollars to my trip. So this car, when I bought it, was getting like 1200 Ks to a tank. This has been tuned, so remapped by Monster Torque here in Perth, which I believe does definitely help with the fuel figures, but from factory, I believe you can still get around 900 to 1000 Ks out of these things. So they're a good engine, they're a 5-cylinder, there's plenty of power, they tow really well. Not the same as a dual cab cruiser, but again, you're paying a quarter of the price, and again, probably half the price to fill the thing up and go through the tank. So they do have some known issues, but doing things like EGR blocks, cleaning your intake and putting a catch can on can definitely help these out and make the motor last a lot longer. So that was from factory. Now that I've added a bull bar, a roof rack, a rooftop tent, all this other stuff that's going to create wind drag, it's definitely nowhere near as good on fuel. That's to be expected though. So now I'll get probably 800 max, but more like 700 depending on what kind of driving I'm doing. It's actually better around town than it is on the highway, because obviously all the things on the roof and stuff that create the wind drag. So if you're sitting on 80 Ks, this thing will get 800 Ks to a tank. On the highway, it's probably more like 650 to 700, but that's still not bad for a car that weighs this much and, you know, still has that amount of power. I mean, it doesn't sound as good as like a Y62 on full noise or some of the V8 cruisers that you do here, but again, is it worth paying that extra money for that little bit of a bonus? But yeah, that's just some of the reasons I think the Bt50 and the Ranger make an awesome tourer. So if you've got another car of your own that you think makes an awesome tourer, leave it down below and tell me why you think that is a perfect car for touring. I'm open to all ideas, but I'm just putting my biased opinion out there on the internet. So we're 4 days out now from leaving, so we'll be packing and probably doing a video on that in about 3 days. So thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you in the next one.